MTS, right?
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Executive Committee meeting for Friday, April 14th. Our chair is on the road, so it's my privilege to work this meeting. And our first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes for March 10th.
Second.
Any further discussion? Do we want a roll call? We need a roll call.
You should use your voting so we have an electronic record of it. You don't need a roll call. You do not need a roll call.
Okay, voting on the minutes. Please vote. We're good. Thank you very much. That passes. Item number 2 is our public comments. We have one speaker, Clive Richardson. Just come on up. Sure. Good morning.
More fancy than it used to be. Okay. Good morning, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the Executive Committee. My name is Clive Richard, and as I'm fond of telling people, I live in the 2nd Supervisory District of this county and in the 9th Council District of the City of San Diego. Anyway, that tells you who I am. I wanted to speak to you this morning because last night for some reason I was remembering something called Rita. I fondly was remembering Rita wasn't an old girlfriend of mine. Rita was the regional, I believe it was the Regional Infrastructure and Transportation Agency. It's interesting to see how this agency has changed from when Rita was introduced. There's a lot of new faces here, and I see why I kind of regret that I haven't been coming more often, because I would have probably gotten to know some of your faces more easily. But anyway, again, I just simply wanted to tell you that I remembered Rita and hope that the future we could survive and thrive as a regional agency. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll close the public comments and go on to item number 3, which is our review of our draft board agendas. Kim?
Okay. Turn your attention to the April 28th, 2017 draft board business agenda. Item 1 is your standard approval of your meeting minutes from your March board meetings. 2 is and 3 are your standard public comments, communications, member comments, and then actions from the policy advisory committees. You'll note under 3, we'll be requesting that the board take action on a California Environmental Quality Act or CEQA exemption for the Bayshore Bikeway Barrio Logan segment. That's going to your transportation committee next Friday. On consent, the approval of proposed solicitations and contract awards, we recommend that option be taken off. We don't have any planned solicitations and contract awards this coming month. So we would propose to remove that. Item 5 is your update of the memorandum of agreement between Sandag and the U.S. Department of Defense. That's on your agenda later today, so we're just asking for board action pending this executive committee's recommendation. Item 6 is the fiscal year 28 Regional Transit Capital Improvement Program, or Transit CIP. That will be going to your transportation committee next Friday. It is an annual item that comes every year that has the capital programs from both MTS and NCTV. Item 7 is a FTA Section 5311 program of projects. It's also something we bring each year. The Section 5311 program from the Federal Transit Administration provides funding for rural transit services. So this would allow the 2 transit operators to program and use those funds. Item 8 is Bike to Work Day. It's coming up on Thursday, May 18th, and we typically ask your jurisdictions and your communities to adopt a resolution and support Bike to Work Day in the time leading up to the actual event. And then items 9 and 10 are your standard monthly reports on meetings and events attended on behalf of Sandag, and then actions taken by the delegated actions taken by the executive director. Then moving on to reports, we have two primary items. One is the Automated Regional Justice Information System, or ARJIS, organizational assessment. This has gone through both the ARJIS steering committee, on which Mayor Voss and Mayor Sanat have sat. It's gone to public safety, and so this will be coming for discussion and action by the board. And item 12 is sending before the development of the 2019 regional plan. We'd like to bring this to the board and just sort of kick off the plan and provide an overview of sort of the schedule and scope of the next update of your regional plan. We'd like to propose to add a closed session item to this this agenda that's not currently written on here. We got word from the California Supreme Court that they will be hearing the 2050 RTP litigation, and so we'd like to brief the board in closed session on the status of that before it goes to hearing. And then item 13 and 14 and 15, continued public comments, upcoming meetings, and adjournment.
Okay, are there any comments or questions regarding that board proposed agenda?
And then for the May 12th board policy meeting agenda, initially we did not have anything scheduled, but we actually did get the loan documentation back from the Federal Build America Bureau for the Gulf Coast TIFIA loan documents. So we're in the process of working with them. As those are ready, we'd like to reserve the May 12th meeting to have the initial review, the board's initial review of the loan documents.
Good. That's good news. Any questions on the board agenda proposed? Could I have a motion?
Motion for approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. It was from Ron Morrison and Mayor Voss. Any further discussion? Please vote. Voting is closed. That passes. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll go to item number 4. This is the independent examination of Measure A revenue estimate communications. I highlight that this has really got 2 items to it. It's one to consider the selection of a law firm, and also number 2 is the amendment of contingency reserve funds, so for $125,000. So there's 2 parts in number 4. In February, the board of directors requested that this committee bring back a recommendation on an independent law firm that can provide an investigation into our processes on Measure A. The executive committee appointed a subcommittee of President Cole, Mayor Voss, and myself to review and go through the RFP processes. And so today I'd like to have Mayor Voss go through the processes that that took place and the recommendation that we have for this committee and ultimately the board. So, Steve?
Thank you. Let me just start by saying that from the outset, I felt it was very important that we undertake an examination, that we do it expeditiously, and that we find a pitfall. So no stone is left unturned in this process. I appreciate that the board moved this along quickly. I particularly appreciate staff for meeting with us and laying the groundwork so that we could get this done. I just want to go back. February 24th, the board voted to ask the executive committee to develop recommendations. March 10th, the executive committee voted to form the ad hoc, which Mayor Sanat mentioned, Council President Cole, Mayor Sanat, and myself. March 14th, the RFP was released. March 16th, we additionally sent a press release out. 23 firms are on record to have received a copy of the RFP. 12 received it by email from Sanday. A number of others downloaded it from our website. 11 downloaded from the website. Proposals were due March 24th. We received some outstanding proposals from some of the top law firms. in the Southland and elsewhere. To me, it was clear from the get-go that one rose above all the others. And I will say that for myself and Council President Cole, we both rated Houston Hennigan tops for clear reasons, not the least of which it jumps off the page at you that they were in charge of the investigation and the prosecution of Enron. They know what they're doing. They know how to get an investigation done. Their background is outstanding if you have the opportunity to read the materials. They were not the least expensive. They were not the most expensive. They were right in the middle of the pack. One thing that jumped out at me, and I suspect others, is they not only specialize in internal investigations. That's all well and good, but what do we do after we get the results of that investigation? And they also specialize in counseling for best government practices after the fact. So for me, it was a clear-cut choice. And so we are recommending that we engage Houston Hennigan. Would like to, the subcommittee is recommending to the executive committee that we engage Houston Hennigan. And I hope the executive committee will then make that same recommendation to the board.
President Cole, do you want to make any comments?
Absolutely. I first want to thank the staff for organizing the meetings. I was able to attend one. My schedule was just a little busy, so I was not able to attend all of the meetings. But as Mayor Voss said, that one stood out and jumped out at you, and that was Hannigan. And so I was pleased to evaluate that and give it the highest evaluation. And I still, though, would like to see an additional investigation, just putting that on the table by the state auditor or the state attorney general to look into this matter. And just a suggestion, to just make sure that we are covering all bases. And but other than that, I think that Hannigan is going to do a great job. And I think that they have a comprehensive we did a comprehensive evaluation and finding that they are the top ones, and I appreciate you also choosing that one because it means that we both agreed on this firm. But other than that, it was a good process. I know that it was done quickly. I was hoping it would be a little bit longer process so I could get involved in it, but I understand the urgency of this issue and situation.
And if I can just jump in, you can blame me for the quick. I was there cracking the whip. Terry will
We can blame him for a lot of things.
You know, as I said, I wanted it fast and I wanted a pit bull. Like, we got it fast and we got a pit bull with a pedigree.
Yeah,
as far as I'm concerned. As to your suggestion of the state auditor or attorney general, I would say the best way to approach that is let's let this investigation take its course. And depending on what they find, if there's something appropriate for a referral to the auditor or the attorney general, then I'm right there in line with you. But I don't want to put the cart before the horse.
okay, not a problem. Just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
I just wanted to add my 2 cents. I think the response we got as far as RFPs, there were some quality proposals, some very good proposals. We went through the standard methodology that Sandag uses to evaluate all RFPs with specific criteria to evaluate quality and responsiveness, technical approach, all those kind of things that we do to make sure we're doing a thorough and fair approach to evaluating. Houston Hennigan came out as a very strong group, and I think will really provide and be responsive to the scope of work that we outlined for this effort. So, are there any questions of the subcommittee to the subcommittee from the executive committee before we open it up for public discussion? Yes, sir.
No questions, comments. I just wanted to comment on, I'm glad you guys are expeditious, thank you, but also very professional. I like the way it's just laid out. I think you're right that Houston brings pretty impressive pedigree. I like the fact that they were involved in the Enron case and all the kinds of complex cases. This is actually probably not as complex as that, but so very impressed, and want to thank you guys for carrying this out expeditiously and professionally and transparently as well, so thank you.
Any other comments from the committee? Okay, let's hear from the public. Zane Hunter?
Here I am.
All right, come on up front.
Distinguished Sandag board members, I'd like to first read you a fortune that I found on the ground in City Heights last night. It says, "An empty stomach is not a good political advisor," and I'm inclined to take the word for it. So let me say, we are here to talk about Measure A. We are here to talk about a discrepancy in numbers. I'm sure some of my friends can talk about that a little bit more. I'd just like to say on my own behalf that I grew up in City Heights. I remember going to the YMCA before it moved and the 15 was being built through. Some of us have asthma and allergies and anxiety and autism, and we have a mission here. We are here to speak about things today, but I just wanted to cue you in a little bit on kind of the bigger picture, the way I see it, and what we have to do for the future. And our friends in City Heights, the little urban pocket in the Sandag Empire. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Roberto Torres. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Roberto Torres. I'm with City Heights H1 team. And the first thing that I would like to address is, as usual, that these meetings happen way too early. Just a reminder, not a lot of us are able to come in and comment. So if there is any space to do it after work hours, I'm open to. Feel welcome to let me know that information so that everybody that couldn't make it today can receive that information. Second, thank you to Steve Barros for taking the initiative and hiring an investigator for this case. We would like some more community input in selecting this kind of investigator, because so far we haven't seen that. Sandag is choosing who researches Sandag. Second, that this is not an unusual thing to have numbers go not match what the expenditure was. So we would like someone to be here permanently and have freedom to investigate Sandag and research the numbers that Sandag gives out to the public, so that this doesn't happen again, and that the public has a more transparent view of what happens inside here. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Sean Elo? Sean?
He's not here yet.
He's not here yet?
Yeah.
Okay. Jasmine Sandra? Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Executive Committee. My name is Jasmine Zafra, and I'm an organizer at Mid-City CAN with the Improving Transportation City Heights team. I want to echo a lot of what my team member Roberto Torres was saying earlier. You know, we do appreciate that there is an investigation into the allegations made on Measure A, and we want to make sure that this goes forward, but it has to be with community involvement. Right now, the community feels a lot of distrust with Sandag. We don't know what they're saying behind closed doors, and we really need to rebuild this trust in order to be able to support any future measures that Sandag puts forth. And so this is why we are calling for a truly independent investigation that will be community-led and will involve a permanent ombudsman that will preside over Sandag matters and inform the public on the decisions that are being made. Until this happens, like I said, we will not be able to trust in any SANDAG measures that come forth. And we really urge the board to listen to the people that are here today speaking on how important it is to listen to the community members. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dalia Contreras.
Hablo un poco de inglés, pero lo voy a decir en español. Buenos días a todos.
Good morning to everyone. She speaks a little English, but she would prefer it if she did it in Spanish. I will be assisting with the translation.
Agradezco mucho que me vayan a escuchar hoy.
I'm really grateful that you are able to hear me today.
Yo soy la comunidad.
I am the community.
Realmente yo vengo representando mi comunidad y a mí sí me gustaría que los que están comiendo su pan, su café, sí me miren. Yo quiero que me miren.
I'm really here representing the community. I am the community, and I would like for the members that are distracted, enjoying their bread or coffee, to really listen and look at me.
Porque yo los he estado observando ahorita y muchos ni se dignan a mirar a las personas que venimos a hablar aquí.
I've been looking around today, and a lot of you guys are not dignified to look at people that are here to speak today.
Hay muchas cosas que yo no sabía. Hay muchas cosas que no se puede en la comunidad lograr cuando no tenemos para pagar un boleto de transporte.
There are a lot of things that I didn't know. There are a lot of things that I didn't know about the city, and there's very little you can do when you have a pass, money to buy a pass to come here.
Yo quiero que escuchen un poquito de la historia de la gente que somos de la comunidad de bajos recursos.
I really want you to hear about the story and what is about the people that have low income, little resources.
Habemos muchísima gente en City Heights y en toda la comunidad de San Diego que no puede pagar un boleto para que tengan sus hijos, sus nietos, participación en eventos después de escuela.
There are a lot of people in City Heights and in San Diego that don't have the money to pay their children or their grandchildren a pass so that they can attend events after school and go to school.
Los boletos para subirse a un camión son de $7 y no puede comprar una persona un pase.
The pass to get into the bus is $7 if you're not able to afford a regular pass.
Ustedes aquí quieren que pase una propuesta a la medida A, quieren hacer muchas cosas que estamos viendo en juntas y que estamos escuchando, que no se puede tener confianza mucha en ustedes porque hay cosas que no las están haciendo como se debe de hacer.
You guys want to pass things like Measure A that will really help us out. However, we're going to these meetings, we're listening to everything that is going on, and it's really hard to put trust into SANDAG.
Aquí yo miro que hay cosas que no se hicieron claras, que el señor Gallegos suponemos que sabía y que no, según no sabe, y no sabemos si todos saben dónde están esos $4 billones, que no sé qué pasó, qué está pasando. Entonces queremos que se haga una investigación, pero no con lo que ustedes quieren, no con las personas que ustedes quieren. Tiene que participar la comunidad para elegir, para que sea legal, para que nosotros podamos creer en ustedes y nosotros, yo soy una fuente de información muy grande en mi comunidad, donde yo puedo ayudar para que se pase esa propuesta y muchos sabemos como yo, pero hay que ser claros, tenemos que tener confianza en ustedes. Para mí ustedes son puro negocio, para ustedes.
Well, from the beginning, we are really distrustful of what's going on, and especially with Gary Gallegos, who we assume knew this was going on, and we didn't really know where this $4 billion went to, where it was lost. We, in the meetings, assumed that was going to be available, and following up that she was mentioning that she's a huge source of information for the community. As I mentioned before, not everybody's able to make it. She's a huge source of information for her community, and she can help this go through if it goes well and if we're able to put the trust in Sandtech that we have before.
¿Cómo ustedes se pueden aprobar entre ustedes $16,000 más y a mí me quitaron de mi seguro, el seguro, $4 porque me estaba dando $4 más?
How can you increase your salaries by $16,000 when she is hardly making it and is still got, I think, withdraw $4 from her retirement?
Eso es ridículo. Yo sé que ahorita déjenme hablar, déjenme termino, porque usted habla todo el tiempo, yo no los conozco. Pero esta es la comunidad que está hablando ahorita.
There's the community that is speaking now. Let me speak what you always get the time to speak.
Yo como le explico a mis nietos que me quitaron $4 y yo tengo la custodia de esos niños.
She has her grandchildren. She has the custody of those grandchildren. How does she explain to them that now, in the limited budget that she was, now she has $4 less?
Y ustedes se aprobaron $16,000 entre ustedes más. Eso es algo que no puedo comprender. Hagan por mi comunidad. Ustedes están aquí para trabajar para mi comunidad, no para quedarse lo que es de mi comunidad.
Not to keep what is the community's.
Okay, thank you very much. We really appreciate your comments.
Terry, can I respond?
Sure.
Señora, nomás quería, soy el alcalde de Imperial Beach, Sergio Lina, quería agradecerle por su presencia hoy. Siempre, obviamente, están bienvenidos aquí y sí tienes razón de regañarnos a nosotros. Escucharemos, estaremos dando tu perspectiva a todos y para que haya más respeto para la comunidad y también para que realmente hacemos un trabajo mejor. Yo no voto aquí, no apruebo nada, soy comité asesor, pero sí tienes la confianza que sí vamos a estar escuchando tu propuesta y dando más feedback a los aquí. Gracias, señora. Siempre estás bienvenido aquí. Gracias.
And can I translate for you,
Yeah,
Serge?
sure.
So Serge was saying that she is always welcome here to come before us and state her mind, and that she has good reason to scold us, and that we will be working better in the future to. I'm forgetting things, Serge.
No, that's fine.
So we'll be working better in the future to gain the trust and the confidence of the community.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Michelle Krug, followed by Catherine Rhodes.
So our podium, I assume that would be a microphone. Good morning. My name is Michelle Krug, and basically what I'm asking is for you to consider, as Council President Myrtle Cole asked, looking at the California Attorney General as well as the California Auditor as options in this choice that you're making. I've been following this particular issue. I knew that the committee had been formed and was trying to find out when the committee was meeting. I was disappointed to find out that as far as creating the RFP, I know Myrtle Cole was not there at that meeting in the creation. And I know that each of the 3 committee members independently scored the ones that were received through the RFP. But it seems to me that if they're independently scoring it, that should have just been given out to the entire committee. And since you guys are the ones that are voting on it anyway, I don't really understand the purpose of a committee if, you know, they weren't getting together to actually discuss all of the proposals. But I would ask you to consider, I don't have any specific opposition to the person that I know is coming forward, but I do think that we should also consider the California Attorney General as well as the auditor. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Catherine?
Hi, Catherine Robeson. I'm a civil engineer here in San Diego. And what I would like you to, and I'm glad the people that you chose, they seem very well qualified. What I would like them to also look into is other issues related to Measure A, specifically the hiding the seismic evidence of active faulting and the huge increase in the Elvira and the Mud Coast trawling. But the thing is, they haven't done full fault investigations. They only have 2 out of 3 areas they actually did fault investigations. They found active faulting. There's a whole area from Old Town all the way up to La Jolla where the whole area should have actually been looked at for fault investigations. And so I would ask you, I went to Department of Transportation, and basically they say I have to work with Sandag, there's not really much they can do. But I'm saying that you should look into a lot more things as it relates to the total increase in cost. The other thing that I think we should look at is what I call collusion between the San Diego County Regional Airport Authority and in Sandag, specifically as it relates to grandfathered airport revenues available here in San Diego. The other issue I would like to, and what it is we were supposed to have like 12% transit by a couple of years. We don't have a trolley to the airport because the airport authority thinks you're not allowed to use airport revenues on grandfathered airports. And what I would refer you to is Port of New York, New Jersey, Chicago, San Francisco, that allows MPOs to actually use the transportation all over, and not just say you can only use it for the airport. We actually have an exception to the rule. The next thing I would like is I came here before when they were doing their federal analysis, and I feel there's a lot of things wrong with Sandag. One of it is, for some reason, they think they can't do things related to water or to housing. When they put projects for Measure A, a lot of people wanted them to do things for the homeless and for housing, and for some reason, staff thinks that it's not an allowable thing that you can do, but it is allowable through the Public Utility Code, and I think maybe in 2004, Sandag actually changed some of their things to, instead of only doing transportation, they actually opened it up to water, and they can do housing. So the law was changed by Christine Kehoe to allow this, and Sandag just tries to tell everybody nothing we can do about housing or homeless. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, I'd like to open it up to the Executive Committee comments on this item and see where we want to go. We have requests to consider the nomination of this particular firm and also to modify our budget a little bit so that we can fund that activity. So comments from the Executive Committee or anybody who'd like to go.
I'd simply move approval.
I would second.
There's a move from Mr. Voss and Jerry Jones is second. Is there further discussion? Anybody would like to chime in? Jerry?
You know, I actually read a few of the reports from the other investigations they did, and I found them very thorough. And if we get back on our reports what I've seen in there, we'll be just fine. I also want to say that you know, I think we've chosen a good firm. I think you guys did a good job, and I would urge everyone to give this process a chance to work through. You know, nothing we do and no decision we make here today is set in stone, and there may be some things. There probably will be some things that will come in this investigation based on what I saw them, you know, provide us to review. There's going to be some suggestions they're going to make to us that we're going to have to go back, and we can make those adjustments internally to our operation based on what they're going to do here. So urge everyone to give this process a chance to work, and I think we're going in the right direction here. And I'm very happy that we're moving as quickly as we are. Thank you, Barry.
Ron, comments?
Yeah, just that I think what the committee has done is put together a good report and found someone that can be truly independent. The last thing we want, I think, is a state agency, political agency, to be involved in this. One of the people made a deal with saying that with not knowing what goes on in the back room, there's a distrust of Sandag. They must be horrified of the state legislature then, if that's the case, if they have distrust of us. But anyway, it's I think that the whole idea is to have truly independence, and so I think this is the best case scenario that we can have in this case, and so therefore it takes it out of being a conviction by journalism, and let's start dealing with let's try to get some facts and let things fall where they fall.
Okay, any other comments from Serge?
Yeah, so independent of this, I think what the public comments, and I've been thinking a lot about with Measure A and all of this stuff, is that, and I noticed when we had public comment during all the discussions and stuff, this agency just has to be better at figuring out how to deal with underserved communities and making people feel more respected when they come here and when we deal with them. And it's one of those, all of us who work in the public realm know the difference between doing it in a really great way and doing it so it just misses the mark. I'll give you an example, the San Elijo Lagoon project, you got Chris Webb and Joe Ellis and Terry Fenner, people who go out of their way, and Keith and Sarah, people who know how to go out of their way and just make people feel like they're part of the process. You guys did that in IB during the SAM project with Chris Webb and Shelby, and we sit down and we just bro out, right? And I think these comments highlight the fact that we're going to have to do we're going to have to go next level in terms of how we interact with the public and get down from our high horses. All of you guys and the staff are incredibly talented, incredibly educated, and this board does great work, but it's not good enough. We've got to go next level on how we make people feel like they're being heard and we're listening. And we're doing that in IB, and I know a lot of you do it, but we've got to be better at it. And because this distrust and all this animosity, all it does, it stops us from getting things done. So now we've got all this stuff because we didn't do a good enough job on being transparent and working with people. So now my projects aren't being funded, Mary's projects aren't being funded, Myrtle's projects aren't being funded, Santee isn't getting stuff, none of us are getting stuff, and that's killing my residents. So
You forgot Lemon Grove.
Lemon Grove, La Mesa, everyone. So,
I got 2 unranked.
and I've seen all of you guys do it, but man, we've got to figure out how to, when people walk in here, they just got to feel more welcome. This place it's too high level. We've got to bro out a lot more. We've got to do it in a way that just people come here and they go, they heard me, they felt respected. And with this process, maybe let's go to City Heights and have a public workshop, or Southeast San Diego, or South Chula Vista. But just so that people feel like we get it, we heard them, and we're going to do a better job. Steve, I know you know how to do it because I watch you do it. You're good at that. And Gary, you do a great job as well. But when they come in here, they walk away and they don't feel good, and that's not good, because I think all of us in public service want people to feel like they're engaged and respected. But the process I saw during Measure A was they didn't feel like that, and I felt bad about it, and if our chairman comes and just admonishes people who come all this way in the 7th floor in this fancy building and they walk away feeling like they didn't feel good about it, then man, it's not good for me and my residents and all of us. So anyway, just my observation. Good process, Steve and Myrtle, thank you very much. I think the investigation's good, but let's figure out a way how to get it out to the public and maybe have some listening sessions and let people yell at us and vent. That's our job, right? Our work's not that hard, and let's make it easier for people to tell us how they feel and just feel like they felt respected. That's my little soapbox.
Lori?
Thank you. First of all, I don't ever feel like I'm on a high horse, especially over here in no man's land. But just a suggestion, and I mean this in only a constructive way. I remember when we were I don't vote, but you guys were voting on the marketing plan for Measure A. Well, the amount of, not the plan, but the amount of money, and I think it was around $250,000 or so. And I had asked to see, you know, a plan. What is the plan? And they said, well, we don't have time. We didn't have time. We've got to get this through. We're on deadline. You know, and I said, well, you know, I personally would like to see a plan of the outreach because, you know, I have a background in branding, marketing, communication, blah, 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 all that. And I said, well, can we at least see a plan after you planned it, you know, if you have to have the money now? And it just never came. And then once I saw the outreach, I thought, you know, this is a lot of the same old, going to the same group, same people. And we have so much more available to us, and we can be so much more creative now to get out to people. So anyway, that, you know, just thought I'd bring that up.
Okay.
For whatever reason.
Sam?
Thank you. So I do agree with you on the projection issue. I think there is a unanimous agreement on that issue in particular. And we need to be transparent. We need to engage the public. But to generalize this as a SANDAG policy, I disagree. I think SANDAG has been engaged with the public. I've seen it. I've been to Escondido so many times where people are invited to weigh in. We respect people, and so you're absolutely right. We need to owe them that respect and the engagement and express their opinion. We have done it. We have done it electronically. We have done an interactive website engagement. We have taken this show to the community, the east, north, west, you know, all over the place. And I think we are engaging the underprivileged community. It's the law. We have done it, and this community has benefited from that, and I'm very appreciative of that. Yes, is there a room for improvement? Always. But I think SANDAG, in general, we're talking about the general practice of SANDAG, have been engaging the community. Can we do more? Yeah. And I just want to make sure that we haven't been, the practice has not been to hide things or not be transparent. We want to be 100% transparent, and we have been, and I think we can do more.
Jerry?
I just want to answer some of Serge's comments, and you're right. What I want to point out to you that you and I have a little bit easier because we come from a small city.
Right.
You know, in my city, my constituents are never more than 3.7 square miles away from me, so it's a little bit easier. I kind of know what my community wants because I'm there, and I know a lot of them. So the problem is that when you get in a bigger city like San Diego, you know, their communities of concern are going to be a little more removed from their leadership than say mine are. Because I have my communities of concern, they're my neighbors. But their concerns are going to be different than City Heights and even Imperial Beach. So sometimes it's just difficult to try and figure out how to reach out. And in all reality, a lot of that outreach is incumbent on us as their representatives. So, you know, the lady earlier said, you know, I am the community. Well, yeah, in my case, I am my community too. I just happen to sit, you know, where I'm their voice here. So I think it's really up to all of us to do a better job of getting out there and making that outreach. And how we do that in an organization this big with so many different concerns and issues is difficult. That's why I've accepted a long time ago that SANDAG will never be one of those agencies that anyone will love, ever. That's the burden I bear for my community. But I come here and I participate because it's important for my community to have that voice, and it's just easier for you and me. That's why.
Okay, I'd like to draw us back to the issue. We have a motion on the floor. I want to make sure the motion also includes the budget adjustment that we saw. Is that agreeable?
Yeah, it's a dual motion. I'd like to make one more comment.
Okay.
I just want to thank all of you for being here. And I want to ask for your patience. I think we've got a good process underway here. I know there's a tendency to look at SANDAG and say, well, it's a good old boys network. Well, I'm old, but I'm a boy.
Not good.
Well, good, I'll leave to somebody else.
It's like me, I feel like a $2 million, but I think 3 years.
Let me just point out to you that, you know, let's talk about it being good old boys and the old ways. Since I came on this board in January 2015, we've had 10 new people on this board out of 21. So we've got new days ahead. And I'm just asking you personally, give me and those other new folks the opportunity to earn your trust. It's going to take a little bit of patience, but I would just like to have that little bit of wiggle room. Let us show you what we're capable of doing and how we're capable of listening.
Okay, let's call the question and please vote. Voting is closed, and that passes. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move to item number 5. This is an update of a memorandum of agreement between Sandag and the U.S. Department of Defense, and we'll have Rob walk us through that.
All right, good morning. On July 8th, the Executive Committee took action to change the U.S. Department of Defense representation on the Sandag Board of Directors and directed the Military Working Group to update the Memorandum of Agreement to reflect the changing conditions. The proposed updated MOA, which is attachment 5 to your board report, found on page 334 of your iPads. It replaces an existing version that has not been updated since 1986. And the update reflects current conditions and the addition of the Military Working Group. The MOA calls for Sandag to review plans being implemented by the armed forces and determine how to best support the military in the region. It also calls for the different branches of the armed forces to support the Military Working Group and relevant Sandag policy advisory committees to address areas of mutual interest. The Military Working Group discussed the draft MOA and suggested that specific reference be made to the regional plan, which has been added to the draft that you have before you. And the working group also suggests that the MOA periodically be reviewed and updated as needed. So the Executive Committee today is asked to recommend that the Board of Directors approve the proposed update to the Memorandum of Agreement between Sandag and the U.S. Department of Defense in substantially the same form as attachment 5 to your report.
Are there any questions for Rob? We have one public speaker, Catherine Rhodes.
Hello, Catherine Rhodes. So for now over 10 to 11 years, I've been coming here regarding the Navy Broadway complex and the lack of seismic investigations and third-party review of those investigations and the investigations being turned to the state geologist. So in your previous MOA, when I came here before, Sandag again staff would say it's not our job to look at the Navy Broadway complex or the pipeline project that is in Point Loma going down Midway, where right next to my neighborhood where I live. And so the old memorandum stated, Sandag is therefore responsible for conducting the intergovernmental review of DoD development plans and projects, which require the review of DoD development plans and projects by appropriate local government bodies and allows the participation by such entities reviewing DoD development plans and projects. Those two sentences are taken out of your new MOU. And so what I see is that you should put those sentences that you took out right back in there, because you guys should be responsible for reviewing Department of Defense projects, specifically the Navy Broadway complex. I know, I think last week or the week before, they're starting the demolition of the buildings, which is fantastic because they're old and they should be demolished. But one interesting thing is the buildings that they previously demolished a long time ago. Those were on the east side of the Navy Broadway complex area. And those are the locations where the fault investigations that they do have show active faulting going through those areas. So it's really great that they took out the buildings that were under the presumed active faulting a long time ago. And so I would say that don't take less responsibility. Take the same responsibility. Don't let your responsibility level go down. Also, you had the military working group. And as people said, if you guys were following your MOA, right now you've never followed your MOA ever, as I see, specifically also related to the pipeline project going from the Navy, from Point Loma all the way over to Miramar. And with that, I have concerns regarding the Point Loma fault that some people consider active and some people don't consider active. and specifically at the intersection of Nimitz and Rosecrans Street, where I believe they should have put some type of emergency valve there, but they didn't because everybody still refuses to confirm or deny active faulting and refuse to turn in fault investigations to the state geologist so we could update the old 1991 La Jolla Quad Alpes Pirillo map and the out-of-date 1992 Point Loma Quad. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Is there further comments or discussions by the committee?
Move approval.
Second.
Move from Mayor Voss and second from President Cole. Any further discussion? Please vote. That's passes 100%. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item number 6, which is our legislative status report with Robin.
Good morning, everyone. All right, so as we talked about at our last meeting, major policy developments continue to unfold in Sacramento. I'm here with a few of those updates, as well as a focus on one bill in particular. A couple weeks ago, the legislature and the governor finally reached agreement on a transportation funding package after more than 2 years of negotiations. I'm going to be providing a much more detailed analysis of that bill at your board meeting following this one. But in general, the bill is expected to generate about $5.2 billion in new revenues for transportation projects throughout the state, evenly split, they're saying, between the state and local projects. Also, just last week, the 3rd District Court of Appeals ruled 2-1 to uphold the California state's authority to operate the cap-and-trade program. The question on the table had been whether or not cap-and-trade should be considered a fee or a tax. If it was found to be a tax, that would have required the legislature to pass that bill with a 2/3 vote. They still are able to file for one more appeal at the California Supreme Court, so we'll be keeping an eye on that to see how things unfold. In the meantime, it is being seen as a big win for the governor and hopefully will help to stabilize some of the quarterly cap-and-trade auctions that we've been watching so closely. And with that being said, we will move on to Assembly Bill 805 now by Assemblymember Lorena Gonzalez. We talked about this bill a little bit at our last meeting. At that point, though, it was just a spot bill. Since then, it's been amended twice to include quite a bit of substance. And so we're going to take some time today to go over some of the major provisions. They're also outlined in your legislative status reports on your iPad starting on page 338. Now, as you know, SANDAG was established as a Joint Powers Authority in the 1970s and then further designated as the San Diego Consolidated Transportation Agency in 2002 under Senate Bill 1703. As a result of this, much of the organizational, governance, and voting structures of SANDAG are prescribed by California statute right now. And so we thought it may be helpful to provide a comparison, basically, of what is right now versus what could or would be under Assembly Bill 805. So we'll start off with the SANDAG Board of Directors. Under current law, SANDAG is governed by a 21-member board of directors composed of mayors, council members, and county supervisors from each of the region's 19 local jurisdictions. Each jurisdiction, as you know, appoints one primary member to the SANDAG Board of Directors, except for the city and the county, which have 2 members each. If passed, AB 805 would instead require that the mayors of each city and the chair of the Board of Supervisors serve as the primary representative to the Board of Directors. In addition, it prescribes that the council president of the city of San Diego serve as a secondary representative for the city on the board. Under current law, alternates are selected by the governing bodies of each city or the county, and under AB 805, the alternates would be selected by the city or county. Because city or county is not actually defined in the bill, it's unclear at this time how that may impact how these selections are made. Current SANDAG statute also subjects all board members to recall by their respective governing bodies. If passed, AB 805 would remove this provision, thereby removing any formal recall mechanism at this time. And finally, pursuant to current SANDAG statutory authority, the board has established annual terms for the chair and vice chair positions. AB 805 alternatively would require that the mayors of the largest and second largest cities in the region serve as the chair of the board, alternating every 4 years. By way of context, in terms of population, as of now, the 2 largest cities would be the city of San Diego and the city of Chula Vista. And so now we're moving on to the voting structure. As you know, with the exception of the consent agenda and when otherwise required by statute, all items before the Board of Directors currently require a majority tally vote, which is the 1 vote per member agency, as well as a majority of the weighted vote. The weighted vote is proportional to each jurisdiction's population as a percentage of the county region and is limited to 100 votes. Each agency must have at least 1 vote. No agency may have more than 40 votes, and there are no fractional votes. The governing bodies of the city and the City of San Diego and the county are currently authorized to decide how they want to split their weighted votes between the 2 representatives, and historically have decided to split them evenly. AB 805 would instead remove the tally vote and require that only a majority of the weighted vote of members present in order to act on any item. The bill also would remove the 40 vote per agency cap and mandate that the City of San Diego and county evenly split their votes between the 2 members. As such, it appears that under AB 805, the weighted vote distribution would be as shown here. Essentially, the 2 county seats would go to 7.5 weighted votes each instead of the current 8. Escondido would lose 1 vote from 5 to 4, and the City of San Diego seats would each gain a vote for each seat, going from 20 votes each to 21 votes each.
Thank you.
And now we'll take a look at our policy advisory committees. So under current law, SANDAG has 5 policy advisory committees: Executive Committee, Transportation, Public Safety, Regional Planning, and the Borders Committee. AB 805 would create a new policy advisory committee, being the Audit Committee. Among its other responsibilities, the Transportation Committee currently is statutorily required to provide a strong focus and commitment to meeting the public transit needs of the San Diego region, to setting transit funding criteria and recommending transit funding levels, as well as undertaking transit responsibilities that resulted for the consolidation as delegated by the board. AB 805 would add to those responsibilities by also requiring the Transportation Committee to develop a report outlining several of those same elements, and then the board would be required to submit that report to the state legislature every year. And finally, except for the Executive Committee, current law requires that allows that voting members on the policy advisory committees may be primary, secondary, or alternate members of the Board of Directors. AB 805 would require that members on the Audit Committee also be primary members from the Board of Directors. And now we're going to spend a bit of time going over our auditing procedures, as these were the focus of the most recent set of amendments to AB 805, and we wanted to make sure to provide a comparison for your reference. Current Public Utilities Code requires SANDAG, both in its responsibility as a consolidated transportation agency and as the San Diego County Regional Transportation Commission, to provide for annual financial audits by a certified public accountant. The Executive Committee currently oversees this process for SANDAG, as well as its 3 component units, which include SourcePoint, ARGIS, as well as the Regional Transportation Commission. The independent auditor then presents the independent financial audit, or as we call it, the comprehensive annual financial report, to the Executive Committee each year. In fact, as you may recall, the independent auditor typically comes to this committee twice. First, to come and let you know what the scope of the report will be and ask for any relevant information to the audit, and then they come back and present the report and any findings. After that, we do present the CAFR to the board as well, and the finance director makes sure that all member agencies receive a copy of that financial audit. It's also important to note that the CAFR is just one component of the SANDAG audit program, which also includes single audits in accordance with federal OMB, TDA and ST audits, as well as independent reports on expenditures and basic financial statements. SANDAG also employs a principal management internal auditor that performs various auditing activities in accordance with government accounting standards. The internal auditor develops and implements fiscal year audit plans. He also plans and oversees administrative, financial, operational, and management audits of SANDAG's activities and programs, and provides recommendations for internal management controls and operational and organizational performance. The internal auditor has unrestricted access to all SANDAG operations, activities, records, and personnel relevant to audit activities, and has the authority to investigate any suspected fraud, waste, or abuse within SANDAG. And in addition, the Transnet Extension Ordinance created the Transnet Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee, or ITOC, which is composed entirely of members of the public. It has 7 members. The ITOC is responsible for, among other things, selecting an independent auditor to conduct an annual fiscal and compliance audit of all Transnet-funded activities, including all recipients of Transnet funds, and providing those results to the SANDAG Board of Directors. The ITOC also selects an independent auditor to conduct triennial performance audits of SANDAG and other agencies involved in the Transnet program, and participates in the SANDAG Transportation System Performance Measurement Process and Project Evaluation Criteria, and reviews ongoing SANDAG system performance evaluations. Per the ordinance, ITALC members are selected through a two-step process. First, there's a public solicitation, then it goes through a screening, a technical screening committee, and finally to a selection committee that's composed of public officials from all jurisdictions, from all subregions of the county, as well as the Board of Supervisors and the Mayor of the City of San Diego. And so now in comparison, AB 805 would create a new 5-member audit committee composed of 2 SANDAG board members and 3 members of the public. The 3 members of the public would be appointed by the Board of Directors. And the audit committee would be responsible for recommending a financial audit firm, appointing an independent performance auditor subject to board approval, and approving an annual audit plan. AB 805 also would create an independent performance auditor. This person would serve a term of 5 years and could only be removed for cause by a 2/3 vote of the audit committee and the Board of Directors. The proposed independent performance auditor would conduct performance audits of all departments, offices, boards, activities, agencies, and programs of SANDAG, prepare annual audit plans, and investigate material claims of financial fraud, waste, or impropriety within SANDAG. In addition, as shown here, AB 805 would provide the independent performance auditor with the power to appoint, employ, and remove personnel as deemed necessary for the administration of the office and to prescribe their duties, scope of authority, and qualifications. It's not clear whether this authority as written now would be limited to the functions of the auditor or apply to SANDAG in its entirety. And finally, AB 805 would also authorize the independent performance auditor to summon any officer, agent, or employee of SANDAG and examine him or her upon oath of affirmation for certain investigatory purposes. Again, if implemented as written, it's not clear, but this may obligate SANDAG under certain circumstances to provide employees with legal representation. Lastly, AB 805 also includes language related to internal control guidelines, administration policy, the Regional Comprehensive Plan, as well as MTS and NCTV. I apologize, I know this is a bit hard to read. But in particular, while SANDAG's independent auditor currently does conduct an annual review of our internal controls and has consistently found these to be in compliance with government standards, AB 805 would require that the Board of Directors develop and adopt internal control guidelines for these same purposes. Similarly, while the Board currently delegates the Executive Director to administer SANDAG's administrative rules and regulations, which include conducting staff performance evaluations on a regular basis, AB 805 would require that the Board develop and adopt an administration policy for these same purposes. As you know, the Board currently maintains this type of administrative role for the Executive Director, which includes conducting an annual performance review and setting annual performance indicators at its Board meetings based on recommendations from this committee. It's not clear, as currently written, how this type of administrative oversight by the Board might be implemented for all agency staff. Next, the proposed changes to the Regional Comprehensive Plan would require additional analysis related to disadvantaged communities as defined by the statewide CalEnviroScreen tool. It also would require the Regional Comprehensive Plan to include aggressive, non-automobile modal share targets for the region, and would potentially make SANDAG subject to the statewide GHG emission reduction goals under AB and SB 32. As a bit of background, these bills require a statewide reduction of GHG emissions to 1990 levels by 2020 and 40% below 1990 levels by 2035, respectively. We currently do include detailed analysis of the regional plan's consistency with these two, with AB and SB 32 in our plan's BIR. However, as written now, it's not clear if these statewide goals would instead become a requirement of the plan in its entirety going forward. And finally, as mentioned at the beginning, AB 805 also includes provisions related to MTS and NCTV's governance and taxing authorities. At this time, we do know that NCTV has received direction from its executive committee to work with the author on amendments, and MTS just yesterday took a position of support with amendments. So all of that being said, I did want to go over some next steps and just lay out the process for a bill in the state legislature for those who may not know. AB 805 has been double referred both to the Committee on Local Government as well as the Assembly Committee on Transportation. It will go to its first hearing this coming Wednesday on the 19th with the Committee on Local Government. If it passes out of that committee, it will then go to the Assembly Committee on Transportation the next week. How the state legislature works is it has various legislative deadlines or benchmarks that each bill needs to meet in order to pass out of the legislature. And so you'll see here, April 28th is when it needs to get out of both of its policy committees. May 26th is when it will need to be out of the fiscal or the appropriations committee. And then June 2nd, it has to get out of the assembly. If it does pass out of the assembly, it essentially starts a process all over again on the Senate side, and ultimately would need to pass out of the legislature by September 15th to give the governor until October 15th to sign or veto the bill. If it is signed by the governor, it would take effect on January 1st of next year. So all of that being said, this is just to reiterate that we are essentially at the beginning of what could be a very iterative process, and so we're very much looking forward to any feedback you can provide today. And ultimately, the executive committee is being asked to discuss the bill and provide a recommendation to the board of directors at its meeting immediately following.
Okay, before we have discussion, are there any questions for clarification for Robin on what she's presented? Anything that needs to be clarified? Anything that needs to be clarified? Anything that needs to be clarified? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Is there any articulation as to the cost incurred by Sandag should this bill pass, and who would bear those costs? Would the state backfill our employee coffers to pay for all these new employees and studies?
There is a provision in the bill that states if there are any that has the unfunded mandate provision in the bill. That being said, there's a bit of ambiguity regarding some of the provisions that I outlined today, and so I think it would take some fleshing out to better understand exactly how much some of the changes may cost Sandag.
Any other questions? Okay, I'd like to open for public comment, and I really request the speakers to be brief and to the point. We are running a little bit short on time, so Michelle Krug and followed by Julio Rivera.
Good morning again. Basically, I would like you to reconsider, originally I was at the board meeting when you decided to put it on watch, this bill. I would encourage you, given the leadership that was shown at MTS yesterday, I particularly want to appreciate Mayor Salas and Council President Myrtle Cole. And I would like you to consider supporting this bill with amendments as done by MTS. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Julio, followed by Kathleen Rhodes.
Good morning, Board. Julio Rivera with Assemblymember Lorena Gonzalez-Fletcher's office. I will be brief. AB 805 attempts to accomplish three things: to provide new authority, greater regional power, and more transparency. It attempts to empower the region's major population centers by providing greater regional power in the countywide decision-making process, and also ensuring more transparency in that process so that member cities know whether they are getting their fair share of resources. The new authority is the power to approach voters for transportation-related sales tax, allowing the transit districts in the county to offer their own priorities over transportation for our communities. The greater regional power component is under AB 805. The MTS, Mid-City, and South Bay communities of interest as a whole will see their clout at Sandag increase with a proportional weighted vote that is based on the major population centers in the county. These major population centers generate the bulk of the per capita funding received by the state and federal government, and been woefully underrepresented under the current single agency vote system. In the greater transparency, Sandag misled the voting public about its finances by overstating revenue projections, thereby overpromising what projects could be funded. They did so at a time that they were asking taxpayers in our communities for money. With an independent auditor reporting to an audit committee comprised of a public member majority, and with AB 805's reporting requirements on transit and climate change goals, our cities will get a clearer picture about what they're getting for their money. And I will commend the board for approving hiring an independent investigator, but I will say that it shouldn't take a news investigation in order to stir action. We're in the first House Policy Committee season, meaning this is the time for dialogue. The Assemblywoman has been in discussion with many of the people in the room before today, and she wishes to continue those discussions. AB 805 will be heard in its first of 3 Assembly committees next week. I wouldn't see a vote on the Assembly floor until after Memorial Day. There's still plenty of time to have a conversation about conversation, and the Assemblywoman wants to thank you for inviting her office here today. So we're open to discussion. The Assembly member, as she's been repeating to all the boards that we've been going to, is open to amendments, and we look forward to continuing the dialogue.
Thank you very much for your comments. Kathleen, followed by Clive Richards.
Hello, Catherine Rhodes, and next month, the executive committee should be discussing the available use of airport revenues, where, in theory, billions of dollars of airport revenues may...
Could you address the 805 issue, please?
Yes, but specifically with that, I actually really like that, and actually, my thing was more just
okay. Go ahead with your comments then. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. You know, Sandag again thinks they can only do transportation, and they can do so much more. You know, we did come to the public and ask, what do you want? And we said, we want the homeless problem in downtown to be taken care of. We want affordable housing. We want transit. We want projects that reduces greenhouse gases. And instead, you ignored everybody. You said that it's not in your purview, by state law somehow, that you can put forward projects regarding housing, affordable housing, transit-oriented development. That's not true. There's, 7 elements of the general plan, and you don't have to only do circulation. And as we said before, you guys do some parts of the safety element for the police and the sheriff issues that you have and the largest issues, but you think you can't do anything for housing, and that's not correct. And so, that's coming forward. But for the grandfathered airport revenues, next month you should be getting a report on that. And, I consider it very much a fraud, waste, and abuse, specifically to the issue of the airport authority saying that they cannot use airport revenues for off-site renovation for the rental car center. And as it relates to Measure A, that's our intermodal terminal center was supposed to be built. It can't be built because the site is on an active fault. And so there's so many different solutions, but without looking at everything in a holistic way, not just transportation only. Also, with the 10,000 Marine Terminal, my thing is that the CIP infrastructure projects from the airport and port should be given over to Sandag or Metropolitan Planning Organization, because right now there's nobody anywhere that does any issues regarding pipelines. And so, the Department of Transportation has a lot of different focus areas, including aviation, bicycles, pedestrian, public transit, pipeline, hazmat, railroads, waterways, maritime, and for some reason you guys think that you wouldn't be able to do waterways and maritime or aviation at Sandag, and you can. It's part of the Department of Transportation. Thank you.
Thank you. Clive?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the Executive Committee, and Clive Richard, and I still live in the Second Council Supervisory District and the Ninth Council District. I really can't find myself supporting very much that's in the AB 805. There are things that I do find I like, and that is I like the idea of being able to do some kind of a tax that will allow for transit to be funded. That I like. But that's really the only thing I like in this bill. Well, maybe an audit committee, I don't know. But anyway, the big problem I have is that I hate the idea that rather than basing a chairmanship on merit, experience, that sort of thing, it's locked into 2 jurisdictions. The chair will be the person elected mayor of the city of San Diego, and the vice chair of this agency will be the person elected mayor of the city of Chula Vista. I like both cities and I like both current mayors, but I don't know that that is the way you would choose a chair of any committee. To have it locked into legislation really says that all of the chairs that this agency has ever had were an incorrect way of choosing. That some of them should not have had a seat. That all of them should have been the mayor of two cities. I find that really disheartening. I will be opposed to this bill as long as I'm able to stand and speak, because I don't think this is the right way to do it. You still have 20 seconds. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll close the public comment and we'll open it up for executive committee discussion. And members, I think our task is up on the slide, whether or not to make a recommendation to the board of directors and what that recommendation might be. Who would like to go first?
Does executive committee go first, or?
No, you can. I'm open. We're open.
Okay, so since the city of Chula Vista is such a strong focus on this bill, I'd like to kind of give my perspective. But my perspective as being a former assembly person and knowing how the bill process works and all the different committees that it has to go to, has to initiate in the House of Origin, which is in the Assembly, and when it passes all the committees, if it makes it through at that time, then it goes over to the Senate side and then back to the House of Origin. So the bill has a lot of work, and there's a lot in here that really needs changing. I think all of us agree here that that's not that bill is far from cooked. So the point is that I think that we really have to be open in being able to dialogue with the assembly member in order to have a seat at the table and to let our concerns be known to her and really be part of the sausage making process that will ultimately be the end of this bill if it gets through. So I think that that's the most important point that we have to do. I know that my office has tried to set up a meeting between Gary, myself, and the assemblywoman in order to really get down to, what are the main things that need to be accomplished? What are the changes that have to be made on Sandag? And, how do we do it in the best manner? And I think that if you just go out the gate and you take a position of opposition, then you kind of shut the door to being able to, be significant or being part of that process to influence the ultimate outcome of what that bill's going to look like at the end. I know that we had a really long discussion at MTS yesterday, and every single member gave their opinion on what they thought of the bill. And the result of that was that the assembly member was present, and she agreed to make a number of very significant amendments to the bill. So what you saw there is, in the analysis that we gave us today, is not what has been promised as she will take back the amendment. So it's even very much changed from what you see today. So I would just urge you as the executive committee to at least take a neutral position on this and wait and see.
Can you share what those amendments
Or I'll help.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was also at the MPS meeting yesterday, and it was very interesting to see the dialogue between the Assemblywoman and the board. Specifically, David Alvarez asked for specific changes. Could she support specific changes to the language regarding governance in MTS? And more importantly, I thought, was Chair Mathis's request to ask her what were the things she was not willing to change. And most of those things were the ones that are most onerous, I think, to this organization. And I use the word onerous because frankly, that's what it is. And I'm a little surprised at the use of the word regional in the Assembly members' representatives' remarks, because the bill really does away with the whole concept of a regional representative board and puts power in the hands of San Diego and Chula Vista, notwithstanding the fact that the population centers are located there. I was really surprised at the times that Ms. Gonzalez-Fletcher got back to the lectern and spoke and interchanged, and I suppose that was a positive thing. But some of the amendments that we've seen come already, the ones that were issued for April 6th, all three of those were detrimental, frankly, to the regional approach that we all kind of hold dear, I think. Mayor Abed, your remarks that I read on the topic at your council meeting were very meaningful to me, at least in my city as well. Now, we're a small city and have a very small influence on Sandag and MTS. However, I think for folks like Santee, who have a trolley line, other cities that are going to lose influence in this particular case towards this bill, made it kind of onerous. And finally, as kind of a newbie in all this business, watching yesterday's 11-6 vote not to support turn into a 54% weighted vote that made MTS sort of, I'll say, kind of stick it to Sandag, which I really was very uncomfortable with. That's really the message of this bill. And I was uncomfortable with that because MTS and Sandag have worked so closely together for so many years to accomplish great things for this region. And I fully support, a second seat, for example, on MTS that the bill provides for Chula Vista, because the need is clearly there, as the vote for Measure A showed. And the taxing authority that MTS has promised in this is wonderful. And I used the analogy yesterday, hey, I'd love my cake, but we don't want the calories, right? So everything else that comes with this bill beyond the taxing authority, as Clive so eloquently stated, is way more than we want. And so again, to be part of yesterday's MTS meeting was tremendously educational for me from sort of how the levers move in this whole operation. And I look forward to hearing the rest of my learned colleagues' remarks on this important topic.
Okay, who would like to go? Ron?
Okay. Yeah, I was also at the MGS meeting yesterday, and it was interesting, and part of my remarks was, wouldn't it be interesting if there was a motion made at this meeting and it passed, and then as a result you immediately called a weighted vote? And guess what ended up happening? It was the moment that there was the vote happened, there was the immediate call for a weighted vote, and it was on the weighted vote that the MTS ended up doing the support, not on the regular vote that they've had. So this was the first time in MTS's history that a weighted vote has actually passed. There's been other attempts, but that's the first time it's actually one has passed. So it kind of gave, as I was saying, it was kind of a foretaste of what the bill was calling for, which would be this, that a handful could go ahead and dictate over everybody else. And there's things, and I agree, there's things in this bill that I think we all agree with. I think the taxing authority, giving that to the transit agencies, I don't think anyone's got a concern with that. That's not a Sandag issue. That's been a state issue. The state's the one that doesn't allow them to do it, not Sandag. And so if they want to correct that, that's not a problem. I think if there's some tightening up needs to be done of the audit, no problem. It's interesting that they want an independent board, a board that will have a majority of non-board members on it, of public members. And yet we already have an independent tax oversight committee that's 100% public members. And why not use the expansion? I brought that up to the assembly person.
Fortify them, oversight,
yeah. Yeah, and so that, that would is a good way to fold this in instead of creating another level of bureaucracy. If the bill was such that we had problems with it because of subtleties, or there was this problem or that problem, I think it would be easy to do with what the MTS board did, which was to say that we support with amendments. If there was subtleties, and say we still need to work on it. And that's what you do when you do it like that. You either support something in its entirety, or if you want tweaking done to it, you say, okay, we support it, but we want amendments. If it doesn't matter to you, then you go a neutral stance. That means it doesn't really matter to us one way or another. And then if you just totally oppose the bill, that's a different story. I don't think we're in either one of those deals, but there's certainly, it's more than subtleties here that we have problems with the bill. Some parts of it we agree with, and we're certainly willing to work, but there are other areas here that just take, we might as well take regional out of any and all things that we discuss, because it no longer would be regional. So I would support the idea of oppose, but waiting on amendments, you know, and subject to amendments, because and then we can come back and we can work with the assembly person. And I know that because I've told her that she's put out that I'm trying to kill the bill. That's not the deal at all. I mean, it's saying there's parts of the bill, and I told her there's parts of the bill I have problems with, and I think we all have. But we can work through those portions, and then the parts we agree on, let's agree on those, and let's work through the rest. And so, as I say, so I would make a motion that the executive committee that we oppose, but waiting on amendments.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Steve?
I'm largely in agreement with Mayor Morrison. In its current form, I believe we should oppose it. However, I have an open mind. If amendments are made that match the needs of this agency, I'm absolutely willing to reconsider. The bill's not all bad. Given the action that we're going to recommend to the board today about the investigation, there may be merit in having a standing audit committee. I'm open to that. You know, when the old saying, only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I'm not sure what we're trying to fix here. I went back and looked at all of the votes we've taken since I joined this board in January 2015. We've taken 199 votes. 95.5% of those votes were unanimous. One vote out of 199 votes, 199 agenda items, Chula Vista and San Diego disagreed with the majority. So I'm not sure what we're trying to fix here. I'd be happy to meet with the Assemblywoman. I haven't had the opportunity or the invitation, but I'd be happy to meet with her and discuss it. But for me, I will second the motion that we oppose in its current form. And I would make clear, my mind is open to rediscussing it with amendments, but bottom line for me, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, but let's...
And a second.
And a second. And I'd like to hear from the other, President Cole.
Thank you. I was at the meeting also, in MTS, and I support this bill with amendments. And I support Assemblymember Lorena Gonzalez-Fletcher because I know that she's trying to do the right thing and make sure that we have transparency for the public that we serve, and also oversight during this process. And that's why I do agree with, especially creation of an audit, new audit committee, so that we truly can get the trust back from the people that I serve and that elected me as city council member. And so that's why I'm going to oppose this motion, because I do feel that Gonzalez-Fletcher is trying to do the right thing for her constituents, which is a lot to do with Chula Vista and the South Bay. So she's going to make amendments. This is like Mayor Salas says, this is not cooked. It's in the cooking stages maybe. It's not done. And so I think that she will improve this bill, and as it goes through Assembly and Senate, it will be improved. And I'm going to support her because I think that she is trying to do the right thing.
Thank you. Jerry?
You know, maybe I have a different view because, you know, I come from a smaller city. Obviously, that has a lot to do with it. You know, I I grew up in Chula Vista, and I always say Chula Vista is my hometown, but Lemon Grove is my home. And with all due respect, Chula Vista doesn't have the right to make decisions for Lemon Grove or to be the voice for Lemon Grove. You know, many years ago, I chose my home in Lemon Grove because I loved Chula Vista, and it was growing faster than what I really wanted. And I chose Lemon Grove because it was small, and I wanted to stay that way. I came to Sandag as an alternate in '02. I'm not sure how many people have been around that long, but here. But I was here when the voting structure, Ron was here because I think he was chair then. I was here when the voting structure that we have today came into being. And that was the child of former Mayor Murphy. And I thought, how ingenious! You know, we created the House and the Senate all in one spot. And so as I look at what this is trying to do, I'm thinking, well, gosh, none of us like Congress. Well, we all love our own congressperson and senator, but we all hate, we hate the institution. But would we eliminate the Senate? Because our forefathers, when they created the United States, they recognized that there was a need for a jurisdictional component, not just a democracy in our republic, and that's what we are as a republic. And that's what we're talking about here today, and then talking about how this change in this voting structure is that a disrespect and a neutralizing of that jurisdictional component. And that's very concerning for those of us in the smaller cities. There's no way that our cities and our city's proxy should be co-opted by the two bigger cities. It should not be that way. The voting system has worked here for a very long time, and frankly, I deal in wastewater, and that's been a very difficult thing to do in dealing with San Diego, where they have control of the regional asset at Point Loma, when we have a very limited voice there. Had that voting structure been around when the sanitation district was created all those years ago, we might have something very different in that respect. But in my experience there, with all due respect to San Diego, if you guys aren't forced to sit down at the table with us to have an equal voice, quite often we get dismissed, and that's what's happened in that case. And that's what will happen in the future here. You're right, it will not be a regional body if the voting structure is changed. That's number one. Number two, who can serve? As I looked at that, I'm thinking, oh gosh, we got all this stuff going on about the Russians interfering in our elections, and here at the state level and in San Diego County, we're talking about the state of California deciding who should represent us at Sandag rather than our own city councils and our own political systems that we all participate in our own jurisdictions. How is that right? Why is that different than the Russians interfering? Why is San Diego interfering or Chula Vista interfering in my election process? It's any different than Russians interfering in the United States process. It's exactly the same thing. So those two things I cannot support, because at some point, not even worth us coming and sitting at the table, because we know that our voice is definitely minimized at that point. Does something need to be done? You know, I supported Measure A. I was an endorsement on that. My city only missed passing it by 0.6%. I think we all know, everybody sitting around this table knows that we have an obligation to transit in the future. How that we do that is always the question. Obviously, how we went about Measure A wasn't the answer. Is there stuff in this 805 that could change that? I like the fact that we can give that the transit agencies can do their own taxing and put their own bills on the ballot. That's fine. I'm okay with that. That's a great idea. That may be the solution. How we audit, you know, I don't know that we need to create a whole separate audit committee. We have the oversight committee. Why not change that and reinforce that? You know, otherwise you got dual tracks going on. I know I watched La Mesa's city council meeting the other night when they discussed that, and I heard Councilmember Baber kind of echo the same opinion that, you know, maybe we need to reinforce the oversight committee rather than creating something new. So yeah, there's a lot of sausage to be made. I know we're running short. Sorry. There's a lot of sausage to be made, but honestly, I can't state enough that I've always felt that Lemon Grove had a reasonable voice here, and we always got heard. I don't see that going forward with 805 the way they're structured now. So I would support, oppose, and listen.
Serge, quick.
Yeah, for me, we're switching on this. IB's neutral. I think Lloyd Bragg voted her conscience voted no on the thing yesterday. Yes, is that right? I told her she shouldn't. I don't tell Lori what to do. The issue for me is, in our city council, at least in my city, is inequality, and that's social equity. And you know, having grown up in IB and an immigrant family and living on the wrong side of the tracks, and you know, having taken my kids all over San Diego, they'd always ask me, why are the folks in La Jolla, why do they have good roads, and why is, when we go skateboarding in Southeast or Barrio Logan, why are there potholes in the street? Why is South Chula Vista a certain way, and why is the fact that my city, which has a 32% poverty rate for kids and 24.7%, we now exceed national city poverty rate, the highest in the county, with the lowest sales tax rate, why does it appear that in San Diego resources seem to flow to the wealthiest communities consistently? That's historically, you can see that everywhere. And when I'm competing in grants with Sandag, I frankly, my council is asking ourselves, why are when we're doing active transportation projects that are ranked high at the state level and are for kids, you know, safe route to school projects where 85% of the kids receive free lunch and 32% live in poverty, half our kids are homeless in our school district, we're competing with some of the wealthiest communities of the world, and that's absolutely not fair. So the current system does not serve my residents all. We gave our all, and I gave my all to Measure A, and now I have nothing to show for it, except a lot of drama. And number two, I already talked to my assembly member, Todd Gloria, or I talked to Assembly Member Fletcher, which is how we do policy, to give my feedback. And this bill as proposed doesn't address issues of social justice, economic justice, and inequality, and making sure that the people who need it the most, like the folks back here, make up for the fact that historically been neglected neighborhoods. That's an IB. I'm sure parts of El Cajon, Southeast San Diego, City Heights, we all know how San Diego is, and that has to change. So whether or not this bill passes, the staff and the board have to really figure out how we're going to deal with the issue of historical inequality in San Diego and make sure that the people who live in poverty and economic hardship get a fair shake, because the reality is millionaires do really well in San Diego, but the folks who need it the most don't. So that's our feedback.
Okay, I'm going to call for the question. I want to restate the motion. My understanding is it's Ron's motion to oppose but wait for amendments. Is that correct?
Right.
Is that clear for everybody? Any further discussion? Would you please vote?
Just clarification, does that include working with the author?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. John, okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Please vote. Voting is closed. We have that passed. Thank you very much. I think that does everything for our agenda for the executive committee, and May 12th is our next meeting. So let's go to the board.